go.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
We got a ton. Everybody, if you can, I'm sure you can hear me. You come in automatically on mute. So throughout the tasting, we would like you to keep that on until you have a question. However, you're more than welcome to unmute it right now to say hello to myself. I'm Robert Young II, known as Robbie Young. I see a lot of familiar faces actually right now. And we got 50 people that have shown up, which is awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, really, really great.
That's cool. Very cool. That is awesome.
Awesome. All right.
Who's from the East Coast? Anybody from the East Coast? Put your hand up if you're from the East Coast. Yeah? All the way?
New Jersey.
Oh boy. Okay.
New Jersey.
We forgive you. It's okay.
We're drinking a nice 2012 Cabernet from you guys.
There you go. Thank you.
Awesome, Bill. And if all y'all would like to participate in the video chat, if you don't know how Zoom works, it's down in the left-hand corner. You can activate your video as well as your microphone. Okay. All right. Meeting a couple more people here and we'll get started.
Yeah, you guys are on time. That's pretty good.
Yeah, 3:02, perfect timing.
There are several people that don't have your you don't have your video on. You need to go to the bottom of the page. There's a picture of a video, and just click on that, and that'll bring your live shot up. We like reading your names. We'd love to see your faces. Now, if you're on the run and you don't want to be seen, I understand. But it's a lot more interesting if we could see. And if your house is all messy, it's too bad, you know.
Yes.
Too late
Right.
now.
Yeah, now we got a bunch more cameras on. That's awesome. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Those of you who don't know who I am Robbie Young, or Robert Young II. I'm a fifth generation of the Robert Young family. And I am currently up here at the Scion house, which I'm sure many of you can tell by my background here. And today we're going to go showcase a couple of wines. We're going to do our 2016 AV Cabernet and our 2015 Scion. I'm just going to walk you through what we're going to be doing besides the wines. So I am going to start off with a little bit of story time while we wait for everybody to get entered in here. And that's going to be about the recent Kincaid fire we had back in October. And then Scott, who you have just seen here earlier, I've just pinned Scott. He's our lovely hospitality host as well. And he is going to discuss a little bit about the AV Cab alongside our winemaker, Matt Michael, that's going to be joining with us as well. So I'm going to screen share here for you, and we're going to get right into it. And before I get started, make sure you have your wines opened up. Have poured yourself a glass like I have right here, whatever that wine may be. And we want to get the palates coated and have something a little to sip on while we go through this story time. All right, 1 second.
Ah.
All right, and that's just reiterating what I went through. All right, so like I said, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the Kincaid fire we had back in October 2019, so just about 6 months ago now. The reason I'm talking about this is because I feel it's, for me personally, it's very, very similar to kind of what we're dealing with right now. This was, for us, an incredibly, big deal. It was a very big hardship for us, and I imagine right now everybody's going through the same thing with the coronavirus. So the Kincaid fire took place back in October 2019. All across Sonoma County, we dealt with this fire that actually took place kind of right back here, about a good 14 miles away. That's where it started. And at the time, it was like a Friday night, a Friday evening. And I had just moved into my new house down in Santa Rosa, and I was actually just staying there for, which would have been the first night. And I got a phone call from my stepmother, who called me to let me know that there was a fire just right up here over the hill, a good 14 miles. And she was letting me know that she was going to stay at a friend's house, didn't want to stay at the ranch. And my dad, of course, being a farmer, he didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay there on the property. So I called my dad. My dad said, "Hey, Rob, there's the fire." And I said, "Are you worried about it?" He said, "No, I'm not worried." He said, "Go back to bed. Don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen." So I ended up getting in my car, go for a drive, headed down the freeway, got to about Healdsburg, and I could see how big the glow was. So what I decided to do was, head out to the house. And upon getting closer, I realized that pretty much all the roads were closed. There was cops blocked off here at Pine Flat, and then down here on 128. And myself, having grown up here on the property, I had ridden my dirt bike all through this place, so I knew how to get in. So anyways, ended up getting into the ranch. Ended up staying here with my dad, and my dad was very calm and collective, wasn't worried about the fire whatsoever. And at the time, the glow was pretty big. However, it was still like 10 miles or so away. And this was about 12:30, actually, right where I'm sitting at right here, which many of you know is our lovely sofas we have, which many of you like to lounge on. I was sitting up here looking right back where the fire was coming. However, I wasn't too concerned about it because it was such a far distance. So, and that was like about 12:30 at night. So come 2 o'clock, I get up, look at the fire. I'm not too worried about it. 4 o'clock, same thing. 5 o'clock, I get up, go look outside, and I'm like, yeah, it's getting closer, but I don't think we need to worry about it. And I kid you not, within 15 minutes, I rest my head, tried to go back to sleep, and I couldn't because the wind was just howling, kind of as it is right now, but not as, obviously, a lot more strong. And I walk out to the front yard, and the front yard was covered in embers. So I ran in, got my dad, and I said, "Dad, get up. We got to get to work. We got to get, the hydrant up and the water tank going." And he looked at me and he said, "Son, I'm going to take a shower and I'll be right out." And I really wanted to laugh really hard, but it wasn't kind of the point in, just the place for that with everything going on. And I said, "Dad, no, come outside." And he comes outside and he sees the fire, which you can kind of see just here in the right-hand top corner up here, which was just starting to come towards the, over the hill and down towards the tasting room. And he said, "You're right." So we ended up running outside, getting in the water truck. And I ended up running to the front yard and getting the hydrant going. And that was about 6 o'clock. So throughout, 6 a.m. all the way to really the next day, we just fought the fire. And, that was something I never thought I'd have to go through. Would have bet $1 million we'd never have to experience it. And it reminds me of this time because for 3 weeks we didn't leave the house, which many of you are doing right now. So it was very, very, very similar scenario. However, we got through it. And I'm sure everyone's going through that as I did with the Kincaid fire and I am with the coronavirus right now. And I just want to say, we're going to get through it and we're going to be back here in hopefully a month or two. And I'll be hosting you up here at our lovely Scion house. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys. And I have a couple more pictures here. So this was my dad with our water tanker. Kind of just went throughout the whole property that day. Here's actually the picture I took down here in the left-hand corner. which is, I took that right as I got up that morning and saw the fire coming over the hill, which was something I'll never forget. And the vineyards, you can see right here how you have the road, and then the vineyard here is unburned, and then you have our pasture land. So that's what most of what we lost through the property was this pasture. None of the vineyard, thankfully. A little bit of equipment, but nothing major. We're still here, still have our homes, tasting room, so we're very, very thankful for that. And if you have your wines open right now, and if you don't decant your wines, we highly recommend you to do so. So in the tasting room up here, we actually use this decanter here, which you can simply just get on Amazon if you Google that menu wine breather down below. And that is something we do with all of our wines, where you just can insert the decanter to the top of the bottle there, flip it over, let it aerate, and then you can actually throw it back, back in the bottle for presentation with your guests, or as we like to do here at our tasting room. And then before we get into the tasting, if y'all would like to purchase any wines for next week's tasting, or just some more wine to enjoy at the house, we're doing a little thank you for joining us, and that is $5 shipping on a case and $10 shipping on 6 bottles. And you can reach out to Lindsay or give us a call if you're interested in any of that. So thank you for listening to me. I'm going to hand it off to Scott Jordan, who is our lovely tasting room associate. Say hi, Scott.
Hi, gang. How's everybody doing? They're all doing fine. Just smile. Show me your glass. You got to have wine in your hand, or you need to go get a bottle and get it open. There you go. You got the tools are the same, even though we're not next to each other. And so we're tasting the 2016 Alexander Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. So many of you that we've met over the times coming into the tasting room, that's kind of where we start. You know, after we have a little Chardonnay, we'll have a little Merlot, and usually this cab. Robbie, if you can throw that slide up, are you still?
Absolutely.
This wine is 92% Cabernet Sauvignon, and it is 8% Malbec. It aged 18 months in 100% French oak. About 40% of that was new oak. They didn't make a lot. And the one thing that I really want you guys to get the message of, and many of you have, these are very small production wines. And when you get your wine club shipments, taste the wine if you're not familiar with it, and enjoy it with your meal, because if you want more, you've got to order it before it's gone, because when it's gone, it's really gone. There's no distribution on it. And 40 barrels is a lot for your garage, but it's not a lot of wine in the wine business. And the wine club has been digging through these wines pretty good. So, but don't wait 6 months, because it won't be there. That's for sure. The color on this is really deep. If you look at this color, it's really, really deep. That beautiful cab. Most of that stuff is grown from the hillside plantings, and you know, you get the black cherries, you get a little bit of figs, you get some coarse currants, little dark chocolate in the finish of the wine. It's rich, silky, but what you're going to notice in this wine, as with all the wines in Alexander Valley, is that nice soft finish. You know you have an Alexander Valley wine when you have that nice, beautiful, soft finish. Oh, that's wonderful. So, yeah, and this is a wine that you can pair up with just about any big meal. It's a big wine because it's 92% cab, but it's really soft, and the 16 is just magnificent. We're really happy with that wine, and yeah, I think you could have this with any of your any of your meals without any big problem. Yeah, this is a big hit, and I know they take the fruit from a different location on this wine as compared to the Scion, which we're going to talk about next. But I want to toss over a question to Matt. I don't see him up here, but he's here somewhere.
I'm here. Can you see me now?
Okay, Matt.
Yeah.
So Matt, my question to you is, you know, you're putting this cab together. Are you picking different locations in the vineyard based on maybe the weather or the taste? What you're finding as you go and walk through the vineyard?
Yeah, that's a good question, Scott. And hello, everyone. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm the winemaker, Matt Michael. I'm not actually sitting in a giant lawn right now. My office isn't as pretty as Robbie's background, so I have a little artificial screen up here. But Robbie, could you throw that picture of the vineyard back up? It's
Yeah.
you had before. So if you look on the map, you can see the big white house in the left mid corner, and if you kind of walk to the right up the hill, you see a cluster of redwood trees there. That's where, before the tasting room was built, yep, right there, that's where it was. So the little island of grapevines that is right below Robbie's arrow there is part of the Scion block. And then right where the box is, it says AV Cabernet. That's also part up and to the right a little bit, right where the actual box is, not the arrow, right there. That's also part of the Scion block as well. So it actually jumps through that row there across the drive. So for the most part, we've identified that block has a little bit coarser soil. It dries out a little faster. And so the vines tend to stress out a little bit more. And what it gives you is a little bit more of a concentrated fruit. So when we grow there versus the AV Cab side, we have a little natural kind of underground creek that runs through the AV Cab block. And so the vines don't get as much water stress. In this picture here, it almost looks flat, but we're actually up about 250 feet in a nice little bench there. And so as the season goes on and the soil starts to dry out, these little stratifications in the land, such as underground water or tufts in the soil, where you have these kind of elevated knolls, those things really start to present themselves, especially in September when it's getting really hot. It's 100 degrees out. And so when you walk through the vineyards and you taste the fruit, you can really tell which areas the fruit has a concentration, because you actually can taste a little bit of the tannin from the grape skin in your mouth and on your teeth. And you can identify which areas maybe have lower tannins. So we go through and we'll flag these areas within the blocks. But as a general rule of thumb, the Scion comes from the block that's marked there, and the AV Cab comes from the block that's marked as well. Generally, what I'm looking for between the two wines is a little bit more of an approachable fruit profile with the AV Cabernet. These are both serious Cabernets. What we wanted to do was have a Cabernet that was drinkable upon release, but you could also lay down. So the AV Cabernet bridges that gap. Not that the Scion isn't drinkable upon release, but that wine's really meant to age, and you can lay it down for a while and not have to worry about what it's going to be like in 7 or 10 years. So the AV Cab fruit tends to be just a little bit lower tannin profile, a little sweeter fruit. You get more black currant, a little bit more of what you said, the black cherries, mission figs, things like that. So if you haven't had the AV Cab yet and you don't have it opened, give it a shot. I think what you'll see is a really, really kind of exotic fruit profile. The Malbec really dials up the red fruit in the blend. And so you get away from a little bit of that kind of overt Cabernet character, and you push in a little bit of that Malbec. So what I get there on the 16 AV is a little bit of exotic red and black fruits, a little sweet currant. It's got a nice fleshy black cherry. And then you get some of that Cabernet that pokes out with that duskiness, little pencil shavings, maybe even a little wet tea leaf. But those are kind of things that, you know, I think kind of bring people into I would say an easier style drinking Cabernet. And I think that's kind of was the emphasis of the AV Cabernet. It's a very serious Cabernet, but let's make something that that maybe, you know, if we release it upon release, you don't have to think about, okay, I'm going to put this in my cellar for 3 years and then jump into it. Does that answer your question, Scott?
Yes, you did a good job with that, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah, very. You know, we always, you know, it's a big property, so there's a lot of areas that we look at, and you know, there's some have really great exposure to the sun, and some not quite as much, and so yeah, that's nice to see where exactly in that vineyard you're pulling that fruit from.
Maybe we move on to the Scion at this point.
Do I have any? Are there any Scion lovers out there? Hands up on Scion lovers. Okay, voting is good. You can vote if you'd like. That's cool. So if you
Got a lot of Scion people out there, it looks like, Scott.
yeah. So anyway, just one other thing for those that have questions, use the chat and put the question in there, and we'll pull those out later. Just so you can, at the bottom of the screen, it says chat. You just click on it, and you can type in whatever your question is that you might have for Matt or Robbie, or, you know, if you pick on me, I'll just make something up. So.
And we'll also have a question or a Q&A portion at the end of Matt's discussion where you can ask the winemaker questions specifically, which is pretty rare. You don't often get to do that.
Yeah, we never get to do that.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Matt, where'd you go?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Yeah, I think.
Rob, how about the slide for Scion? There you go.
All right. So the Scion, so those of you that know the Scion and love it, this is exactly what you expect. So what happens with this, the Scion's really is a Bordeaux blend. And so a Bordeaux blend usually consists of 2 of the Bordeaux varietals, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Bordeaux, or Malbec that are blended together. That's just kind of the basic term for a Bordeaux blend. For the most part, people usually base their Bordeaux blends with Cabernet Sauvignon and then blend other varietals into it. A lot of times people ask, well, why do you do that? If you've ever had Cabernet Sauvignon on its own, it can be quite tannic, especially from the hillside. Each varietal has its own kind of offering that it has. So Cabernet is usually quite dark. It usually can be quite tannic. It usually has a distinct flavor and aroma profile. So when you start blending these other varietals in, it's kind of the best way I can explain it is when you're cooking and you use spices. So if you just make a chicken dish and you don't add anything to it, no salt, no pepper, then it's going to taste pretty one-dimensional. But as you start seasoning as you go, it adds layers to that dish, and eventually you have this complex, complete dish at the end. So essentially, in a very kind of rudimentary explanation, that's what we do when we blend. So all these varietals like Merlot and Cabernet Franc and Petit Bordeaux, they offer something to the final blend. So Merlot is usually a red fruit wine. It's driven with a lower tannin profile. It usually has more red cherry notes, pomegranate. Petit Bordeaux can be quite big. It can be floral. It can also have a really dried kind of prune, wilted prune kind of aromatic. And Cabernet Franc is kind of the one that really rounds the blend out in my mind and a little bit goes a long way. It can be very herbal, dried herbs. It can have an interesting dusty, loamy note to it. So when you start adding these varietals in little bits, what you get is a rounding out of a wine, a complexity. You get aromatic complexity and also taste complexity. If you think of a Cabernet as kind of like the blades like on a saw blade, right? They have teeth on it. And as you start blending these in, you're kind of like filling in the blades. So the tannin becomes less overt and innocuous and becomes more rounded and polished. On top of that, you're adding aromatic complexity and taste complexity. So this takes a long time to get the hang of, and it takes a long time of training because you have to know how these things will project out. We blend early and we blend across the way, but you have to see kind of in your mind how these things will play out 2 months or 2 years or 3 years down the road. And the only way to do that is to do it for a number of years and learn from people, mentors. So essentially, this wine, if you look at it, it just has a broader wingspan than the AV Cab. It's got really good depth of character, interest in aromatics and flavor. And so really what you get here is just kind of the complete package of the kind of the pinnacle of what Alexander Valley Cabernet can bring, especially in a Bordeaux blend. And you get those layers. I mean, there's so much going on aromatically, and there's so much in the mouth. There's a lot to be made about vintages, and people talk a lot about vintages. The 2016 is my first full vintage. So here I am in 2020, talking about my first red release here. So this is a very slow process. It takes a long time. It takes a long time to learn the vineyards as well. But 15 I inherited from Kevin as wine and barrels. So we put the blends together. 15 to me is a very elegant vintage, and you'll see it across all the wines. And I love that for that vintage. 16 is kind of the last of the drought year vintages, and people always talk about drought year vintages. And so what you typically get when you have a drought year vintage, especially like 16 was, where you had very small amount of rain, is you tend to get more concentrated fruit. Bigger wines, they tend to have darker color. So essentially what you're going to be transitioning into is the 16s from here on out. Reds moving forward will be mine. And you guys are already into the white wines. Getting back to the Scion, though, we do a little bit longer aging regime on that, and that's because of the complexity and the tannin. We really want that extra 6 to 8 months. Really helps flesh that wine out, soften it across the palate. But there's also something really interesting that happens when a cab gets about 2 years in barrel. You really start seeing the complexity come up on the wine. So for all of our Bob's Burn Pile, the Silas, which is going to be out shortly, the Meeks, and the Scion, all of those see 2+ years in cooperage, and it really, really creates a masterful Cabernet.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Right now might be a good time to go to a question. I have something from Russ and Nico.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're giving a shout out to Bob's Burn Pile, of course, but maybe do you want to talk a little bit more about the Silas and the Meeks? Because they're asking if we have something coming up. Actually, they ask if we have Rob's Acres coming up, but I thought it'd be a good time to pitch the Silas and Meeks. Like.
Yeah, for sure. So if you look at the bottom of the screen where the Bob's Burn Pile block is marked there, that's the highest elevation on our property. It also, the soil goes from gravelly loam down below to almost a rocky tuft up there. The vines are a lot smaller, compact, but they produce really concentrated fruit. But we've hit a point in that block where we actually have a little bit extra Cabernet that we can play with. And so what we decided to do was to do a twist on the Bob. So it's the same fruit up there, but we're adding about 10% or so Petit Verdot in there, and it's 50% New Oak. So what we wanted to do was give you a different variation of some of the best Cabernet that we have on our site there. The Bob's is, it's full throttle. It's 100% New Oak. It's the Bob's fruit. It's the best we have, and it really gives you that full throttle Cabernet experience that some people want. The Silas is, I would say, more, in my mind, is more of a refined touch, because you're not giving some of that full throttle with the oak, and you're relying on the fruit framing and a little bit of Petit Verdot to round it out. So you just see a different expression. They're both beautiful, and I think every time I pour it, it's split 50-50 on what people want. Maybe 60-40 Silas, I don't know, but it's pretty close. But I think if you like the Bob's, you'll love the Silas. And the Meeks is essentially a blend of a few blocks that we have. So right next to the Bob's, there's on the right side there's a little corner there that we've picked, and then we have a little Cabernet behind the house on the back property. And what I've done there is really pick the Cabernet to have a really elegant platform, and we use about 40-50% New Oak on it. And so you're going to see a really different expression of Cabernet with the Meeks. It's almost more in a juicy red fruit realm, as opposed to the dark fruit, dark fig, dark blackberry. So just a really different expression. And the cool thing about all of these is that it's all Cabernet, it's all beautiful, it's all right, and it's all from our property. So you get a lot of different expression from these sites. And I think you can see kind of the diversity of what we have to offer here on the property as well.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. And now would be a really good time to take care of that shipping special too, because that's only good for this virtual tasting participants. I have another quick question for you from John. Hi, John and Larry. This is from a different John, but for the shading, especially for the Scion block, when you pointed that out, does shading have anything to do with how that's produced, or when that's picked, if there's a lot more shading on a certain block?
Can you go back? Does he mean shading on the fruit or shading
on the fruit?
On the fruit. Yeah. So Robbie, if you pull that picture up again, I'm sure people are getting tired of looking at this, but it's an easy way to explain it. So the Scion block, or the Scion block and the AV block cab there, they're essentially facing northwest-ish. And so we have a lot of problem with the afternoon sun on that block. So we relax the canopy to shade the fruit, and that really helps. This gets a lot of direct sunlight from basically 12 o'clock on to about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So shading per se in the block, if there's no trees or anything, so it's wide open, so we get direct sunlight all day. So it's really a matter of protecting the fruit. It can get pretty extreme up here. In 2017, we hit, on a 3-day period, we hit 115, 112, and 111 on the ranch. And when you get late in the season, that can be a real detriment to the vines and to the fruit. And so it's really about, when you get to these extreme temperatures in these areas that get warmer, like Upper Calistoga, Knights Valley, and here, you really want to protect the fruit. When you see fruit that is kind of right up like this in a narrow, maybe that's really for areas like Russian River and things that don't get as hot and don't get enough direct sunlight to really affect the fruit. So yes, shading does play a big part in how we grow the Cabernet here.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And if anybody's wondering, it is 82 degrees out here today. It is quite hot.
Currently it's 82.
Really nice. Don't mean to brag, but it is really nice out here today. It's always warmer out here at the valley.
51 in New Jersey, that's freezing.
Yeah.
We'd have to have jackets on and hats and stuff. Well, soon you guys can come back out. We just wish it was now.
I've got a few more quick questions for Matt, if everybody's game for that.
Yeah.
Fire it away.
So, let's see. Our alcohol content, for the most part, is in the mid-14s, and lots of cabs are a little bit lower. Why do you think the mid-14s work best? And they do give a shout out saying that our wines are fantastic. So,
thank you. You know, it's really hard to comment on exactly why people list the alcohol levels they do on their labels. There's just a bandwidth in this area with our viticulture where grapes get to a certain ripeness where the flavor balances the acidity. And for me, that tends to be about 23.8 to 24.5 bricks, somewhere in there. I don't water back in the fermenter. It is legal to do that when you're fermenting. No one talks about that, but I do not add water back. So we usually end up 14.5, 14.6 right in there. I feel like that's, talking to Kevin when I started, he always felt like that bricks level got the optimum ripeness on our particular site for Cabernet, and walking through and tasting with him when I took over, I agree with him. So it kind of always ends up falling in that spot. And I think it's just our site. I think in other sites, it may be a little earlier or maybe a little later. And, on top of that, if people are adding water back, then their alcohol percentages can be lower as well. So for us, it's kind of our sweet spot for the estate.
Great. And you brought up Kevin Warren, the previous winemaker, and one person did ask how long you studied with your predecessor.
So we talked and worked together for 2 weeks, and then he was basically on call for me for the first month I was here. I was winemaker for almost 10 years prior, and Kevin had been here for, 15 or 16 years. So we kind of speak the same language, and we know we don't need a lot of dialogue to understand what we're talking about. It's more about the particular site, the particular vineyards, how he made the wines, because there's a lot of stylistically, there's a lot of things you can do. You can take the same fruit, 20 people can take the same fruit from the same site, and all 20 of those wines will taste completely different. So it's about understanding what the vineyard has to offer and how we farm that, and then understanding his winemaking style. My goal was to not come in and flip the apple cart over, but to really understand what he did and how he made the wines from the site, and then take that torch and continue in the future.
Awesome. And I see one more question here. Rob, if you want to flip back to the decanter slide. Matt, what time do you think is kind of the hot spot to where we don't really need or want to decant these wines in particular? How long do you usually like to decant them when they're first released, typically?
It kind of depends on the wine. So Bob's and Silas, some of the bigger ones. I mean, you can easily go 12 hours in that, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I've done up to a day. I don't want to start recommending things like that, but initially upon release, but you can easily go 12 hours. Those are very big wines that can take a lot of air. So the idea is just to initially get some oxygen to them and then let them sit, because those wines are so big that they'll actually absorb that oxygen. It's if you continue to shake them and swirl them and shake them and swirl them in the decanter, that's where you're gonna over oxygenate them. So the idea is just to get some oxygen, let them sit, and then let them open up with that initial burst of oxygen. As wines get older, I would say 5 to 7 years out, you probably don't really need to decant as much. It's kind of up to you. 10 years on, for sure, but I think initially it just helps that wine open up, because when they're young, they're so tight still, and they've been controlled, oxygen's been controlled. So when they're aging in the bottle, they do have a little bit of oxygen transfer between the cork, which allows them to soften over time, which is why decanting isn't as necessary as up front to really bring the expression of the wine out.
Got it. And as our lovely GM just commented, we usually do that for about 6 months in the tasting room, and then we move on to just bottle. So trying to get everyone's perspective here. Well, thank you, Matt. We appreciate that.
Lindsay,
yes.
I've got an answer to a question that came up because we did taste that. This was from Jay, and it says, I have a couple of 09 and 10 Bobs. I lost track of it and just found, what are the chances it's still excellent? Let me tell you, it's really simple.
Yeah.
We opened up the 10 because we uncovered a bunch of stuff, because we have verticals of that wine, and we opened up the 10. It rocked. That thing was smoking good. It was that was so nice. It was just clean, a beautiful finish. We didn't open the 9, but I think 9 was a pretty good year with big yields. Don't you think, Matt? Was 9 wasn't that a big yield, real hot? And
yeah, and we're not susceptible to the variability that I've seen on other properties or estates. The areas that Kevin had flagged out, and I still continue to pick for Chardonnay, are some of the best areas on the ranch. But in particular, the reds, we just do not get season variability. I mean, sometimes we'll have a little more elegant vintages, but there's always great concentration, great flavor depth. And so when I started here, 2016, Kevin pulled a 10-year vertical of the AV Chard and a 10-year vertical of the Scion, and we all tasted. And the Scion, this should be great and hold up. But the Chardonnays, I was a little skeptical. I'm like 10 years out on the Chardonnay. Both verticals age beautifully. So there's something not only particularly about this site, but also about the winemaking style that Kevin does and that I continue to do, where the wines seem to age very well, even the Chardonnay. So you're safe, going 10 years out on these, because the proof was in the pudding. I mean, every wine held up in there, including the Chardonnays. So I really see something different with this property that I haven't seen in a lot of other places. And so I think you can sleep well knowing that if you want to lay something down here for a while, you can.
Yeah, I agree. I was a fan way before working at Robbie Young. My son, Kevin, and I, we actually collected Scion for 15 years and had a 10-year vertical as well. That told you a lot, because the fruit came from basically the same area. You made it in a similar formula. And the only thing that was really different was maybe the weather. But other than that, I mean, it was so consistent. And it was kind of fun to do that experience. That was so. To the guy that I just jumped on that question, put the 9 and 10 together in a dinner party, and put a little bit in one glass and a little bit in the other. Have it with dinner. That's going to be amazing. 2009 and 10 Bob's. That's going to be awesome.
And also, just so you guys know, I can get in contact with you specifically about the Meeks and Silas and other wines that we offer, but Bob's in particular, we do still have some verticals available, which are really, really cool. I think it's mostly 11, 12, and 13. 13, we have about 2 cases total, and 14, we have about 3 cases. So current vintage right now is 15. We also have 16, but those older ones are really, really special.
And yummy.
And yummy. And yummy.
Do
Any
well
more questions for Matt, you guys, while he's still with us? Feel free to take your mute off and ask him directly if you prefer.
Lindsay, we have a question from, oh, I just lost it here. Greg Lord, it was saying, how does the 2012 Scion compare to the 2015? I guess vintage-wise?
Ooh.
Is that for me or no?
Yeah, for you, Matt. Like, I speak on the vintages if you could of those.
So I haven't had those particular wines in a few years, so I can't really tell you at this particular point. But what I can tell you is that when I went through the vertical, I think 12 and 11 were on a large. 12 was a larger size vintage, and 11 we had a really cool rainy vintage.
12 and 15.
12 and 15. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, the 12. I think the 12 and 15 would be similar. The 12 had a decent crop size. 12 and 13 were the biggest crops we had in a while. So typically, what you have when you have a larger crop yield, larger crop year, is you have a little bit more elegance in the wines, and that has to do basically with the crop load. So we don't, in vineyards that already run a big crop and they let it go wild, then you just have lack of concentration. So what we have here is we run a pretty low yield. So our yields, even when they're up, they're not up high. And so what you see is a little bit of refinement in the wines. In other words, something that seems more approachable, maybe because it has a slightly lower tannin profile in front. So I would think 12 and 15 would probably be on the same plane, just based on the vintage notes. I haven't had the 12 in a while, so I can't compare it.
I have. It's really good.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's pouring really nice. You could age that thing for, Lord, probably another 5-7 years easy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but not in my house.
No, I got 112 and it's just sitting there for
No,
a couple more years.
my wife has no filter. There's no way that wouldn't last.
All right, all right. We got another question here. Yeah, from it's 09 and 10 Bobs. That's going to be phenomenal. But one of the reoccurring questions I do see is about the Silas and the Thomas Meek Cabernet. When are those going to be released? We're going to release those around the time at the time of the 2017 Bob's Burn Pile is sent out to you guys, which should be end of October.
Meeks could possibly be a little bit earlier. Everything's changed a little bit due to everything that's going on in the world right now, but we plan to have kind of little reveal parties, or at least some lunches at Valette, coupled with some other parties that we're having over the next few months. So we'll keep you updated on when those are going to actually come to fruition, but Meeks will most likely be sometime this summer, and then Bob's and Silas will be early fall. But you can purchase them now all as futures, so that's what's cool. You can purchase them, you can get the shipping discount for being part of this, and then, get them in 4 or 5 months.
Yes.
And I had the Silas, and that thing rocked. Holy smokes.
Pretty killer. So is the Meeks.
It was really, really good. My wife got a taste of it too, and she stole the bottle. So we know exactly what that was all about.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, anything else
really nice.
Michael, our winemaker?
Anything for Matt before he heads out?
All right. Well, thanks, Matt. We really
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, Matt. Appreciate it.
Good one.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. Looks like we got quite a bit of other questions here.
Do your best, Robbie. Come on. You can
Yeah, I'm
answer.
going to do my best. So
It's
I'm gonna
Stump Robbie.
Ranch Day. So we have a question on Ranch Day, whether that is still going on. So I would say, I'm going to speak from my experience here. I would say if everything happens to clear up, it would still go on. But definitely with the current conditions right now, we can't say, but we're planning on it, I would say.
Folks, we'll know a little bit more after we get our governor's announcement in a couple weeks, more after May 3rd, basically, with specifically when we can open the tasting room, specifically when we can have larger groups of people gathering together, when will be appointment only and things like that. So we'll let you know just as soon as possible. We're probably projecting late May, very early June for tasting room appointments. Right now, if you're local, we are doing pickups just right outside the door, totally safe, no contact. we're also offering deliveries to locals as well. And now's the time to do it too if you aren't local, as Jersey folks, because we're doing those shipping specials just for participants.
And I have a question that somebody asked that I think I can answer. Maybe I'll get slapped in the head and but, no, they said when the Corona thing is over, can we have these video tastings?
I saw that.
I don't see why not. Why the heck? Yeah, sure. The difference is the pictures behind us are going to be of all of you guys drinking the wines live. And, you know, so if you can't be here and you're in New York or some other part of the country, yeah, why not? You know, we'll figure it out. I'll push that. I'll push for that. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. I think we're getting quite a big turnout, which is amazing. I think, you know, for everybody, this is our first virtual tasting we ever done. And I can say I expected maybe 20 people, and we've had, you know, 60, 70, 80 in some cases, which is really great.
Wow.
I'm very, very fortunate.
Well, you know what it is, Lindsay and Robbie, Mackenzie. They're fans. These people are fans. I mean, and I was a fan way before working in the tasting room. And, you know, you got to love what Robert Young has done. I mean, they've made some amazing wines, and they're very consistent. And that's why these people keep staying in the club. They keep buying wine because it's not because of Robbie. Well, we love Robbie. It's you know, it's all about the wine, and the wine is off the chart. Well, now someone's getting creative. They have a picture of the vineyard behind their head. I can't see who is that. Jeff? That Jeff? Yeah. Hi, Jeff. Good job, man.
You know where I am?
Is that at an event? They're like in the vineyard.
at the dinner last fall.
Oh, that was
Party.
Well, that's
what Bob's. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Bob's Burn Pile.
That's one
Actually,
that stylist.
you'll like this one better, Robbie. Here we go. There you are.
Oh yeah, there I am.
Oh, that's awesome. So all of you
Pour
have
me some wine, man.
Think about
Yeah.
to come back
Right.
when we're able to be together.
I want to come back.
We want you to
We
come back.
want you back.
Good enough.
And
Awesome.
guys, next Wednesday at 3 p.m., we'll send everyone a link as well as a thank you and a copy of our large formats and verticals. But next Wednesday at 3 p.m., we've got Rachel, who is in production. She is the cellar assistant to Matt, and she's part of the family, and she just had a baby. So she'll be on with the baby, and our topic will be the brand today. Hi, Rachel.
Oh, there you are. Oh, look at that cutie pie.
Hi.
Hello.
I've been listening in.
Love it. She's
Love it.
So I think another reason people like these is they just want a day drink. They want an excuse to day drink. That's me.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we get to do that. In fact, I never get to taste wine during the tasting because I'm pouring it for you guys, and now I get to pour for me. I like that. So we're going to keep doing this then.
Yeah, you get to drink, we get to drink. And what's there not to like about this, right?
Yeah, what's wrong with that? Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like I want to touch on some other questions. I think there's quite a few.
Yeah, there are a lot.
So I see a couple. One's about rosé coming out. Rosé you actually can acquire right now, so it's technically out. And I'm gonna it's on our website as well, and this will actually lead me in. As soon as I pull it up here, it'll actually lead me into another question regarding the Malone. So the rosé, you can call us right now, and we can certainly get it to you. The Malone, we have a Viognier coming out shortly as well, which is phenomenal. And really quick, I'm going to pull up our website so I can actually directly read you our tasting notes.
Tasting notes on what, Robbie?
On our Malone, of course.
Oh, yeah. What'd you make? Two. You made what? 2 barrels?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, 2 or 3. I can't recall. I think it's 2. So those of you who don't know what this wine is, I did not have a clue what a melon or a Malone, they call it Malone, was. It is a white wine. It's called Malone de Bourgogne. In Burgundy, it's called Muscat or Muscadet. Here in the United States, you cannot label it Muscat or Muscadet because it's not from Burgundy, so they call it Malone, from what I understand. This is it's not a sweet wine whatsoever. It's what I have understood, it's kind of similar to like something in between a Sauv Blanc and a Viognier. Typically you want it served chilled. It's very, very good with seafood. It's probably our most acidic wine, which would make sense going with the seafood. And like I said, we do 2 barrels of it, so it's incredibly small. But yeah, let's say for flavor, you get mango, I guess lemon curd, kumquat, all that. But definitely has, in my opinion, like a Viognier Sauv Blanc type nose without the grapefruit, I guess. If you bring that to a friend's house, they're going to be like, what the heck is this wine?
No, you're correct, Robbie. It throws them off because you go, oh, I like that. It's crisp and fresh. Sitting out by the pool, which we're going to do here in California pretty soon. I got to believe that.
Yeah.
Great wine for that. And of course, oysters. Man, does that go with oysters? Oh, my God.
Yeah. It's actually the perfect wine for oysters, from what I hear.
I see a really big question here.
Go for it.
In Pennsylvania. With some notice, nope. I don't know. Oh, I have no idea.
We'll make sure we get to all of you guys with questions that we missed. And this is recorded also, so we can send you copies of this if you'd like. And again, Rob, you want to go ahead and show that slide of
absolutely.
On next week, and again, reiterate the shipping specials. Thank you all so much for joining today. This has been a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
And next week's going to be even more fun because we're going to showcase the rosé and one of my favorite wines. And my son Kevin is in there. He was quiet the entire time. That's really weird. Anyway, we're gonna taste the 2017 Cabernet Franc, and I haven't tasted that, so I'm okay. But that's the wine I got burned on 8 years ago when I went to the barrel tasting weekend, and we stopped at Robbie Young at the end, and they had 1 barrel of Cab Franc, and they were selling futures, and so I bought them, and I bought the futures. And I went to pick them up, and I said, well, give me a couple of cases. And they said, you're an idiot. And I go, what do you mean? Well, it's gone. They had 1 barrel. They had 1 barrel. So I got burned on Cab Franc, but I love the Cabernet Franc. And the rosé is made from Malbec.
Yeah, Malbec and Merlot.
And Merlot, I mean.
Yeah. So the rosé, I'll add on that. That's our 3rd vintage. We honestly didn't do a whole lot of it. I think like 4 or 5 barrels worth. And typically we have that for a couple months, especially in the summertime when we release it, because everybody wants a nice refreshing wine to enjoy. And then the Cabernet Franc is our best-selling Bordeaux blend, straight Bordeaux varietal. That is my favorite. I think it's our member favorite, if I can speak for everybody. It's very, very soft and smooth. Doesn't have any of that like vegetal, or you can get habanero kind of bell pepper notes out of a Cab Franc. This does not have that at all.
No.
And that's the reason we don't. I mean, we try to make it every year. Typically we do. However, if we have a bad growing year, typically those are some of the notes you're going to get, and that's why you're not going to see it from us on those bad years, because we don't.
And Robbie, that's a wine that you gotta buy up on, because when it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
They didn't make a lot of it. I don't even in the 17, right? I don't think it's a lot.
Yeah, and I think everybody thinks that myself, I have access to those wines, but
no, you don't. Because I've asked you.
I can't get them. I would love to have that 16 Cab Franc, because that was an incredible year, and I'm a little bit pissed I did not buy some more. So.
You're out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get it when you see it, because then it's gone. And part of the deal, man. Even when I went to the manager and said, I'm a really big buyer, come on. And they went, yeah, get out of here.
I wasn't the manager then, by the way.
So pick it up when you need to, and then get that stuff for next week, because you know the weather's changing, even in New Jersey or Pennsylvania. The warm weather's coming, and rosé is like the stuff. I mean, you're not going to sit out by the pool when it's 80 degrees and drink, a Scion. You're going to drink rosé.
Well, and guys, this is the first year that we're going to do rosé and Sauvignon in large formats. So that'll be really exciting. We'll talk a little bit more about that next time. But again, first year to do that. And yeah, they'll be available soon.
It's all fun.
All right, we'll send a follow-up email. Thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful, blessed.
And kudos to all you guys to chime in with us and hang out and taste these great wines with us. We love that. Thank you. You're awesome.
Thanks,
Very
guys.
supportive.
Thank you. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's fun. You'll be back soon. You'll be back.
I will be back.
Thank you.
Whose shot is that? Bud Starrington.